Hello, this is Adam with DreamMade Productions. This video is made possible by the very kind donations of viewers like you. Thank you. If you are in a position to help this channel improve quality and grow, please visit my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below.
It is the 31st century, and mankind is once again at war. The battlefields of the future are dominated by huge robotic war machines known as battlemechs.
Hello! So, some people have been asking in the comments my thoughts on the BattleTech Encounters rules. I've got 2 games under my belt, plus a little practice game where I was teaching myself the rules and just kind of playing myself. And as a special bonus, for those of you who have watched my comments, we have a fan on today. Let me introduce Lore.
Hello, friends.
All right, so I've got 2 and 1 practice game against myself under my belt. Lore, how many times have you played BattleTech Encounters?
Enough to have lost count. If you're going to make me guess, I'll say a couple dozen.
Okay.
I've played 2-player up to, I think I've played it with like 4 players.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you're the expert in this conversation then, because I've played against myself, I played against my brother twice, and that was pretty much it.
Yep, I've played with adults and children, so it gets interesting to explain some of the complexities that go on in this game to people that aren't accustomed to, heavy board game or BattleTech rules, although the relationship of this game to BattleTech is purely thematic. There's no actual mechs in this game other than the ones that are drawn on the cards.
Yep, that was one observation that I made and my brother agreed with when we were playing, is that I'm pretty sure they just wrote these rules and then put BattleTech as like a veneer on top of it. It's the Encounters rules. It could be World War II encounter. It could be fantasy battle encounter. I think they're still pretty strong rules for what they are, but the BattleTech stuff is just sort of an extra on there.
I would 100% agree with that. You could put any flavor you liked on top of these mechanics. You could put no flavor at all on top of these mechanics, and it would still be a reasonably interesting game.
Oh yeah, not to say that they did a bad job. When I opened the box and did my box opening video, I commented on how beautiful the artwork is and how more or less a lot of the decisions they made kind of sort of make sense for what they're doing, like how the equipment kind of changes your dice rolls and a little bit about the lore with the different units and stuff. But the game is almost worth it just for the art cards, just to have all these beautiful little pieces of art sitting around.
I would also agree with that. So my comments that it's not really, you're not really playing BattleTech. That's not to say that it doesn't successfully pull off having a BattleTech theme, and it's got a lot of great art, and it references a bunch of the, popular mercenary companies. Definitely enjoying the BattleTech theme. They did a good job putting that over the top of a game that didn't need to have a theme.
Yeah, did you ever play what was it called? It was the mass combat system FASA made years and years ago. I'm blanking right now. Battlefield or something like that? Battle Force. I think it was Battle Force.
I think you're right, because I think I've played a bunch of Alpha Strike, and Alpha Strike inherited several concepts from Battle Force, and so I see references to that every now and then, but I haven't actually played that.
Yeah, I've looked through the rules on it. I knew people, God, back in the 90s that played BattleTech. Back then I was broke. I had the 3025 tech manual and a few plastic minis. My collection has grown as I've gotten older, but people I kind of knew played it some, and it seemed like it was like super light BattleTech. Like you weren't moving mechs around. It was like, I don't remember how big the formations were, but you were like moving a piece that was like companies or battalions or something size. It was real abstract.
Yeah, seems about right. You can do that, I think, in Alpha Strike. I'm not 100% sure how the rules for that work. I've mostly done lance to company size engagements with Alpha Strike.
Yeah, it reminds me of that because when you're playing encounters, it's very abstract. Like your mission, invade this planet, and then you roll a few little encounters and you succeed or fail or whatever. It's not like you're seeing any of these battles really take place unless you're really stretching your imagination.
Yep, it's all about rolling the dice and manipulating the dice, not necessarily immersing yourself in the specifics of what's happening, what planet you're on, etc.
It is still a lot of fun, though. I had a lot of fun with my brother. He beat me by 2 points. It was so close. He lucked out and got one of those 3-point missions and did really well. And I was like, oh no, now I almost caught up, but he beat me both times. It was crazy.
Well, speaking of getting beaten by 2 points, that's one of my core gripes with the game. I've got the rules manual in front of me, and the section for ending the game reads as such: the first player to reach 10 reputation, which is your victory points, immediately wins. My issue with that is that it makes no consideration for who played first, so it's entirely possible. Multiple times I have seen someone reach 10 points on the 4th turn of the game. It might be possible to do it faster. That is how fast I have seen it done repeatedly. And so if the first player won on their 4th turn, the other players only had 3 turns.
Yeah. We didn't have anything. Our game went for quite a while. But it was sort of a snowball rolling once you kind of get ahead, because in his very first mission, he got 3 or 4 of the recon lances in a row where you get to keep them and they add 1 to your die roll later. And
Yep, those are handy.
I drew like clan something star almost immediately, and it took it was hard to overcome that. He got a bunch of easy rolls and it set him up for success easy, and it was still, a lot of rolls, and I was able to come back from it some, but it can, if you get the perfect run of cards and some pretty good rolls at the beginning, you can be set up for victory really easily in this game.
You certainly can. There's absolutely a snowball aspect. And briefly on the recon lance, that is actually one of the most dangerous lances in the game to draw, because it requires you to exactly match a 1. And so if you hit it at the point where you're down to like 2 or 3 dice, what are the chances that one of those dice comes up 1? And if they don't, you're dead. But yeah, the snowball factor is absolutely there. You have to score some early victories and parlay those victories into equipment that helps you make more victories, which helps you make more money, which helps you, refresh your equipment and win even more. And if you stumble at any point and there's a player at the table who didn't stumble, they're going to win.
Oh yeah, and you can be doing really well, and then you roll a bunch of 1s, and you're like, oh crap.
I am famous for needing to hit exactly 4 and rolling all 3s and 5s.
Oh, there's some fun stuff that goes in on it, though. So what did you think of the equipment that was involved? I did have something happen where we were flipping over the black market, or whatever it's called, where you buy your equipment cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said on my channel, obviously I got started with 3025. The Star League Tech Manual came out. Then the 3050 Clan Invasion Manual came out. After 3055, I don't have much experience, and you start losing me. So we flip over a card, re-engineered lasers. My brother, he plays the game a little bit. He watches my videos once in a while. And he was like, what are re-engineered lasers? And I'm like, I don't know. I think that's from the Jihad. Once you get into stuff like that, it's like, if I'm playing in a game, I'm going to be like, all right, what does that piece of equipment do? It seemed like they put a pretty good mix of weapons in there. What did you think of all the items that they put in?
I did recognize everything that was in here. I hadn't necessarily played with all of it. Re-engineered lasers is a good example of something that comes along in some later age that I'm not very experienced with. I've mostly played in 3025 Clan Invasion era, like on the tabletop, so that's where I have most of my knowledge base. I heard the term re-engineered laser, and as I mentioned a bit ago, I've played a whole bunch of Alpha Strike, and I want to say re-engineered lasers is one of the properties that you can have in Alpha. I don't really remember too much. I don't go really big into the like specific unit powers in Alpha Strike, but it comes on in later ages. What age, I couldn't tell you. I'm sure Sarna could tell us. That's where I would go if I wanted to discover the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I was at his house. I was sitting at his kitchen table, and I was like, "Wow, I know I've heard this before, but I don't remember what they do."
Yep, another one that pops up. There's a Void signature system, I think it's called. We have some sort of stealth tech. I couldn't tell you what exactly it does in Classic, but there's a card in the Encounters game that's very powerful, and that allows you to, after you flip an encounter, if it's something you don't think you can beat, you can just say, no, you know what? No, I'm not going to do this. Where normally any encounter you flip, you have to engage with, win or lose. Void signature system allows you to say, I don't actually want to do that. I want to end my turn right now.
Yeah, there's several of those stealth systems. There was the ones from the Star League. I think the null signature system was theirs, and then there's the stealth armor that showed up late Clan Invasion, maybe during Operation Bulldog and stuff, where they were destroying Clan Smoke Jaguar. And then there was like light polarization that might have been Star League, and they've done a lot of stuff where it's been trying to make mechs at different ranges harder to hit. The only one that I remember ever playing against was stealth armor, and it was kind of like, okay, yeah, it's making you harder to hit, and the penalty is you're generating extra heat and stuff.
Yep, that's my vague recollection of it. My experience with stealth again comes from Alpha Strike, and I used it as a way of protecting my battle armor. It makes them harder to hit, and you are correct, it scales. It makes it even more difficult at long ranges. You could actually think of it as increasing the range penalties to shoot at your units. That's fairly accurate correspondence to how it works in the game.
Yeah, in one of my Arsenal videos, I did stealth armor, and reading through the lore of it and stuff, and they were talking about it was mostly on mechs and stuff. I was like, no, put this on your artillery pieces, on your self-propelled artillery pieces. That way you can fire and move, and you'd be, practically invisible. You wouldn't really be open to return battery fire.
Depends on how they were spotting the return fire. If you had an infantry squad, like lasing you or something with the tag or whatever else BattleTech has to call in fire like that, then yes, you would be harder to hit. And I guess the second suggestion, I don't know that BattleTech has anything like this. I don't know if this is how counter battery fire works, but this is how it works in real life, is that there is such a thing as an artillery radar that kind of pinpoints where the shots came from while they're in the air. And of course, your shots aren't stealth.
Yeah, that's a good point. It would be a lot harder if you were like, oh, bullets just appeared from nowhere. We had to trace that back.
There is always this the surprise factor of, oh, something just happened and now I have to react to it. But that is one of the technologies used in real life. And does that exist in BattleTech? I don't know. It's a real deep topic when you start talking about the technology that we have in the modern era versus what does and doesn't exist in BattleTech, because a lot of it was written, in the late 70s, early 80s. So their reference point is that level of tech and earlier.
Yeah, one of my first ever videos was doing a basic lore of BattleTech. I told some people I was going to start doing BattleTech battle reports, and they were like, what's BattleTech? So I made this video, and it's real rough. You can tell I'm just learning to do video editing. but I commented that BattleTech is not the future of today. It's the future of like 1982 or something. Like if you look at the old art, it's CRT monitors and stuff. And I said a good thing to kind of go watch to get a feel of like the technology you'd be dealing with is like Alien, like that kind of grungy, broke down kind of future 80s technology.
I was just thinking that exact same thing. Like, if you want a tech reference for how the inside of like spaceships and mech cockpits and whatnot is going to look, Alien is where you can start. They do show a lot of stuff like that there.
Especially since a lot of these like jump ships and stuff and even a lot of drop ships are like, 300 years old by the time of the secession war, the late secession wars and stuff. There's got to be broken panels and stuff all over the place.
Yep, it's a good way to picture the universe, especially when you consider things like the third and fourth succession wars, where most of the knowledge base and production capacity in the inner sphere has greatly been reduced, and we can't make the cool lost tech stuff anymore. To me, that feels like imagining the stuff in the 80s, or the big chunky computers and old school typewriters and stuff, compared to the tech that we have now. That's the vibe I get from imagining that kind of thing.
Oh, and I get it even more because, like, when I was doing some research about the Star League and watching Tex and the Black Pants Legions thing a few years ago about the whole Star League Civil War and the Ameris Crisis, it dawned on me that, the clans have all this advanced technology, and they had kind of a head start because they took all of the data cores and stuff with them. They never nuked each other completely back to the Stone Age like the Inner Sphere did. But I got to thinking, I was like, they just took the technology that was left over after this huge war. Imagine all of the stuff that the Star League was like experimenting with and working with, and was like just entering production or was on the drawing boards, that got wiped out in the Ameris Crisis. Like, I'm sure there's stuff out there that even if the clans found it, they would be like, wow, look at this,
Yep, you have to imagine, hundreds of planets worth of economy and brain power going into making better stuff.
Yeah, it would have been a cool time to see. Well, getting back to BattleTech Encounters, what do you feel of the game? You think that it's priced right? Who would you recommend the game to?
I would say anybody that enjoys kind of a dice game would enjoy this. You don't have to be a BattleTech fan. That is absolutely not required. If you enjoy other games, it reminds me most of a game that at this point has to be at least 30 years old, because I played this in my youth, called Fill or Bust, which had a similar sort of, you take 6 dice and you have to make some sort of scoring combination with those 6 dice, and if ever you roll them and none of them score, your turn's over and you pass it to the next. That theme is very present in Encounters, so that's what that reminds me of. Other things where you roll and maybe you get some score and maybe you don't, would be things like Yahtzee and whatnot. You could think of this as a more complicated Yahtzee. The comparison sort of breaks down the deeper you get, but that's a good place to start. So if somebody enjoys Yahtzee, there's a decent chance they will enjoy Encounters.
Yeah, I kind of say it's priced about right. It's not a very expensive game. You could go pick it up, and even now I've seen it on sale rarely at Barnes & Noble, marked down a little bit. So if you kind of keep your eye open and go get it, you might be able to get a better deal on it. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it's a great kind of ease people into BattleTech, because if you drop Total Warfare on somebody and they look at it, they're going to be like, I don't even know, let alone, the hundreds of novels that have been written and all the source books and stuff. But if you pull out this little dice game and it came with its own little primer for the universe in it that was, I don't know, 10 pages or something like that, it'd be a great place for people to kind of look at this and go, wow, this looks really neat. Maybe I will, invest in a beginner's box or something like that.
Yep, looking at the Barnes & Noble website, it is currently retailing for $29.99, and I believe that's how much I spent on it, but it's been a year and I don't have the receipt, so I can't prove that.
Yeah, mine came with the Kickstarter, so I don't remember what it was listed on there, but I think I've seen it at Barnes and Noble with one of like the little 20% off stickers on it once in a while, but I could be misremembering. But even at $30, just like I said, all the art cards that you get on it, I remember paying back in the 90s and stuff when all of those art trading card things were out. Not like Magic the Gathering, but where you just got, trading cards for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or G.I. Joe or whatever. I remember paying card for card more than that for all those little packs.
Yep, I think $30 is approximately what you would expect to pay for a game like this. In addition to being a BattleTech nerd, I'm also a board game nerd, so I own a bunch of different titles and games with this much depth and this many cards. 30 is about right.
Oh yeah, and its portability is nice too. Just pick up the box, carry it into somewhere versus, trying to pack up a bunch of mechs, dice, markers, terrain or map sheets, mech sheets, and then you forget something. It's nice to just pick up the box and have a little game to play that lets you at least immerse yourself a little bit in the BattleTech universe.
Yep. Also does not require any writing utensils to play. It's just the cards and the dice, and you're done.
Well, I think we both agree this is a great game to pick up, especially for $30. Even if you aren't big into the game, I still suggest it just for the art cards. I've sat and looked through them and go, wow, this is really cool. I'd like to have this as a poster.
So for people that are coming from a heavy BattleTech background, would you like to perhaps go through what mercenary units are covered on the cards here and say a thing or two about them?
All right, I got the Grey Death Legion here. Now, I am guilty of not reading a lot of the BattleTech novels, but I have read the first 3, I think, of the Grey Death Legion, the classic ones. The first equipment card you buy each turn costs 1 fewer C bills to a minimum of 1. That's kind of cool.
It is indeed. This is a great. The bonus is good in the early game. Helps you get started. It doesn't really have legs into the end game where you're trying to make lots of points every turn, but this is fine.
And it's got that beautiful Shadowhawk on there shooting somebody with that medium laser.
It certainly does. And my entry into BattleTech novels actually began with a Grey Death Legion book. I picked something up when I was a little lore who was, I'm going to say 12 or 13 at the time, just wandering around a bookstore looking for something to read. Hey, I'm going to pick this book up. And it was, I want to say Tactics of Duty by Keith, which is not one of the foundational Grey Death books, but I didn't know that at the time. It had a robot on it. It was cool. That's where I got started. Okay, next I will go. I have the Kellhounds card, which has a archer firing a bunch of LRMs, as archers do. And their bonus is begin the game with the Noble Patronage token, which is a game mechanic designed as a sort of bad luck insurance. You still get paid if you fail your contract and you have Noble Patronage.
Which makes sense in lore. I mean, they worked for House Steiner, so they got paid.
But they didn't lose, did they? I'm sure they lost at some point.
Oh, I'm sure they lost sooner. Everybody loses sooner or later, even if it's a small engagement. But yeah, they were a premier, and I guess still are. I haven't read too much about Ill Clan era. Like I know Clan Wolf reconnected with itself and somehow conquered Earth, but I don't know the details. So I don't know if the Kellhounds are still around at that time. I would imagine they are, but they were a major mercenary force, and you can imagine with the backing of the Lyrans, they probably had some really good equipment.
I'm sure they did, and that's what's represented on their card here. And that was my same thought. I do remember reading the books that had Morgan Kell in them, and I remember when he, breaks his exile and shows up and kind of declares himself, "Hey, I'm back," and of course they basically give him the whole Kellhound's organization straight back to him, even though he'd been gone for, was it 20 years or so he was in exile? I forget. Self-imposed exile.
Something like that, yeah. Well, my next one is one that's very special to my heart, the Iridani Light Horses. So the reason this is so special to me, this is the unit that you play in MechWarrior 3. Their ability is, once per turn, when flipping a contract, flip the top 2, take 1, and place the other back on top of the contract deck. So that lets you hopefully screw over your opponent a little bit.
Yep, it's also great for dodging bad contracts. There are some that are, I guess maybe bad isn't the right word, not advantageous based on where you are in the game. The one that comes to mind is the garrison duty contract, because garrison duty says the upside of garrison duty is that you can end that contract at any time. You don't have to fill all your dice onto encounters like you normally do. But the downside of garrison duty is after you're done with garrison duty, your turn is over. You cannot continue. You can't make more points. And later in the game, like maybe you've got 8 or 9 points and I'm trying to shut the door on you. I've got 8 points. I draw a garrison duty. It's worth 1. If I finish that, I can't make any more points. Turn goes back to you. You are almost certainly going to win. So with Eridani, you can fish for the contract that isn't the garrison duty and try to win. So it's just as much about getting something that you want as, yeah, I guess you could use it to put a bad one there for the next player to get. But I mostly use it for getting, like, dodging the bad ones myself and getting something that is either less bad, or there are a couple that are insanely good, and we can cover those later if you would like. So here we go to the 21st Centauri Lancers. I don't really have a personal connection to this unit, but there's a cool looking atlas on this card, and their bonus is you cannot receive the censure token. If you would receive it, discard it instead. If you draw the Moral Quandary encounter, discard it and draw it again. And that line is there because Moral Quandary is a thing that would cause you to gain the censure token, and so it's not really fair to resolve that card as written if you have a power that says you can't get the censure token. Censure is kind of you can think of it as the opposite of Noble Patronage. It's meant to put the brakes on somebody who's ahead, mostly.
Yeah, I never actually got the censure token in either of the games that we played, so I don't have much experience with it. But it is cool to have somebody that just has the option to go, nope, not taking that. So.
Yep. Its function, the censure token, means that your opponent gets to choose your encounters. So it's kind of like the opposite of what we just talked about with Eridani, where you get to pick the ones you want, or at least avoid the ones you don't. Well, now your opponent gets to look at 2 and choose one for you, so you're always going to get the disadvantageous contract, and it's a really tough debuff to have as you go through the game.
All right, next up, I'm going to choose the Northwind Highlanders. Really cool unit. Once per turn, score an additional 2 reputation when completing a garrison duty or planetary assault Northwind contract. That is awesome.
That is a very powerful bonus, and I did speak disparagingly a moment ago about garrison duty. Northwind is the one unit that doesn't get hampered quite as much by garrison duty, and it does mean that early in the game, Northwind can come out of the gate scoring points super fast if they get garrison duty on their early turns. I would believe that Northwind Highlanders is probably, if you're looking for a way to break the game and win in like maybe 2, maximum 3 turns, Northwind is probably how you're going to do it, because you're going to get that garrison duty.
Oh yeah, I can see that getting out of hand real quick.
Yep. Again, going back to the idea that the book says you're done when you get to 10, our house rule is when somebody gets to 10, you finish the turn. So like if you went first and you get to 10, I get to have a chance to try to, meet or exceed the amount of points that you made because you had that extra turn.
Oh yeah, that's another thing too. There with BattleTech, everyone has house rules. I have my command deck system where I don't roll for initiative. It's cards that you flip over. it seems like every time I go to a BattleTech game, there is some rule that somebody's thrown in there. So it's already started with BattleTech Encounters.
Yep. And it's all based on the 10-point you win rule. Another way that we play to kind of get around that is when we start the game, we say how many turns we are going to take. This is a 5-turn game or a 6-turn game. You know, however, whatever you agree to, we're going to play that many turns and be done. Is a lot different feel than as soon as somebody gets to 10, the game's over.
That's a cool rule too. Might have to adopt that myself.
Yep. It puts a clock on you. You know. And again, it's possible that you play like a 6-turn game and nobody gets to 10, and whoever got to 8 won the game. That is a possible outcome. I'll move on to the next mercenary unit here. I have McCarran's Armored Cavalry. Once per turn, score an additional 1 reputation on planetary assault contracts, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the most common type of contract in here. So, assuming you are able to finish those contracts, which is itself another wrinkle. I guess the way it's written, once per turn. So even if you do 2 planetary assault contracts, you still only get the 1 extra point for being McCarran's Armored Cavalry.
Yep.
So I'm sort of lukewarm on the power level of this card, but it's got the cool blue and yellow Vindicator on the card, so I like it. I like Vindies.
I'm gonna steal the cool one. I'm gonna go with Wolf's Dragoons. These guys need no introduction. They've been in the game from the beginning, I guess, or very close to the beginning. I think it was their first source book, very early in the game. And there is so much about Wolf's Dragoons. I swear, every minute of every day has been documented in fiction at some point. They're an awesome mercenary unit. Their ability is, once per turn, you may look at the top 3 cards of the equipment deck, choose one to replace any card in the black market, and discard the other 2.
That is a super impactful ability, and it's one of the only things in the game that allows you to actively harm your opponent's chances of winning the game. The Censure token, which we already discussed, is one of the ways that you can sort of hose your opponent, but the opponent has to get the Censure token for that to work. With Wolf's Dragoons, if I look across the table at you and I see that you have some missile equipment and I can see how much money you have, and there's another piece of missile equipment in the black market, I can use my Wolf Dragoon power to make sure that that doesn't exist when the turn gets to you. So I can hose your equipment set with my Wolf Dragoon's power. And that's... yeah, it is a thing that will happen. Of course, you can use it to your own advantage as the Wolf Dragoon's player to put out equipment that you want to buy. And at the same time, without sacrificing that power, you can also push equipment that you don't want your opponents to have out of the black market. Super powerful card. And the last one, this will be the Waco Rangers. If you do not have the Censure token, you may take it to re-roll up to 4 dice. Do not pass it on at the end of the turn. So there's a mechanic with Censure and with Noble Patronage where there's some sort of condition at the end of the turn where you might have to give it to the other player, or maybe you get rid of it. I honestly don't remember how that works. But Waco Rangers says you don't get to do that. If you got Censure, you get to keep it. But the bonus is that you get to re-roll 4 dice. So it's like having an extra piece of equipment, but as soon as you activate it, you have this negative effect on you for the rest of the game.
Or I guess until somebody does something else that triggers it.
That's true. Until somebody else gets an effect that says you gain Censure. Because there's only ever 1 token at a time. So if someone gains it, that means whoever had it has to lose it. So you take it from them.
Yeah, the MRB is mad at you.
Exactly. And I know very little of the Waco Rangers lore, but what I understand of it, that makes a lot of sense. Aren't they sort of diametrically opposed to Wolf's Dragoons? Is that how that goes?
Yeah, that had a big thing when the Word of Blake invaded Outreach. The Waco Rangers were involved somehow. I know they're sort of like the outlaw, dirty trick squad of mercenary groups that's always like, okay, you're on your last warning with the MRB. And that's a mercenary review board. They have after 30, 50 or something like that, they changed their initials to the Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission or something like that. They got new acronym, but I always remember them as the MRB, the Mercenary Review Board for Comstar.
That is how I think of them as well. Although you're right, they show up in a lot of different places. A lot of times they're the sort of meta reputation. Most recently in the BattleTech computer game made by Harebrained Schemes that came out a few years ago, they were present in there, and that was sort of they weren't specifically a faction that you had to do missions for, but your rating with them grew over time, and was one of the ways that you could tell how far along in the game you were, was how good am I with MRV.
Oh yeah, one of the ways that Comstar controls the universe.
So I put them into sort of 3 groups. There's only 8 of them, so
yeah,
more detailed stratification is not really that important. And of course, because it's a dice game, it is entirely possible that if you're running one of the ones I consider to be less powerful, things can happen. This is the BattleTech universe. You can always get shot in the face on turn 1 and lose the game just immediately. That is a thing that happens here because dice. At any rate, so the mercenary units that I consider to be less powerful in this game, just based on my experience, McCarrans and Kellhounds have bonuses that just don't carry very well through the game. McCarrans only comes into play when you finish a contract, not when you're part way through a contract. If you decide to cash out, you don't get their bonus. And also some of the more powerful contracts in here that you would choose to do, I'm thinking specifically of the Clan Hunter and the Headhunter contracts, are by far the best contracts to get in this game. McCarrans doesn't benefit from those. So for those reasons, McCarran doesn't scale really well. And Kellhounds says that you start with the Noble Patronage, but we just talked a minute ago about how the tokens say that if someone else gains it, you lose it. So it's possible for the other player in the game to just take the one bonus that you got for playing the Kellhounds away from you before you even get to use it. So those 2 are kind of on the bottom, and I wouldn't really recommend that anybody play those if you're trying to win. If you're just having fun and you're playing with your favorite mercenary unit because you love BattleTech, then it's fine. Do whatever you want to do. But from a competitive, I'm actually trying to win this game sort of angle, those aren't the ones you want to play. The 3 I've got in the medium strength pile, which is they can situationally be very good, but they don't have what I would call a good top end on them. First is going to be the Grey Death Legion. So this is the one where equipment is 1 C-bill cheaper to buy. This does get you an advantage early in the game, so you can get started more quickly, and acquiring a couple pieces of equipment that can help you start completing contracts instead of just doing a couple encounters and cashing out for the C-bills is an important power scaling point in the game. So Grey Death can help you get there a little faster, but it does taper off. Once you have the equipment and you're not buying more, their bonus does nothing. So they don't have anything that helps you make lots of points once you've accumulated the equipment. Northwind Highlanders I put in this. They are really hit or miss. As we've discussed multiple times already, what Garrison Duty is, what it does. They do love Garrison Duty because it gives them more points, but Garrison Duty puts a cap on how long your turn can be. One of the mechanics in the game is if you're winning, just roll over another contract and keep going, try to make more points. But Garrison Duty says on it, this is the last contract you get to do. Your turn is over when you're done with this. So yes, it's cool that they get more points, and they can get lots of points early in the game because that contract is the easiest one to finish. But it takes away from your high-end potential. So if you're doing something like, say, the house rule I suggested, where we're going to play 6 turns, well, if you're playing Northwind, this might lead to some extra points on like turn 1, 2, and 3 for you, but it's going to hamper your ability to make a lot of points on those later turns when you've got your full equipment set and you're ready to go, and the second contract you flip over is Garrison Duty. Your turn's done. You just wasted a whole bunch of your money-making potential. I guess
not to mention, there's always that chance that you play your entire game and never flip over Garrison Duty.
That is a thing that happens when you have these units that want a very specific thing from you. If you never, or even worse, like you see the other player draw Planetary Assault Northwind, you're like, no, that's the thing that I needed. The other one in the middle power weight, I would put Waco Rangers. This is the one where you get to reroll dice if you take the Sentry token. That is a powerful ability, and you can leverage it early on as well as into the end game to take that bonus. It's, like I said, I treat it as an extra piece of equipment, because that's what a lot of the equipment do for you, is manipulate your dice in some way. So it's a cool power, but the drawback of the Sentry token can really hurt your earning potential and your ability to win. So it's not a power to be activated lightly. Mostly you save it if you're about to lose. You just activate that so that maybe you can get through the encounter that you're doing and not lose. But it is a powerful thing that you have from the get-go. So you basically have a medium power piece of equipment immediately.
Yep, you don't have to pay for it, and it is a pretty good piece of equipment, because it'll be a while before you get to re-roll 4 dice.
Yes, that's I want to say the equipment that costs like 6 C-bills to buy, or 6 million, I guess. A token is 1 million, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
I think that's what the fluff says, but when you're playing with game pieces, it's $6. You have to pay $6 to buy it.
Yep.
That's a lot. You're not going to have that for a while.
Yeah, that's how we referred to it too. We were like, yep, 6 space bucks.
Indeed. And so that leaves the 3 that I consider to be really powerful and have a good top end and be especially good when you're playing a long game. It's going to be Eridani, the 21st Centauri Lancers, and the Wolf's Dragoons. All the powers that these have scale well into the end game. They have great potential on them to be used in multiple different ways. Centauri, of course, is that you just never have Censure, and so all those bad things we just talked about what Censure does, you just never have to worry about that, ever. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And being immune to that is perhaps not as powerful as Eridani's ability to choose a contract, but it's still really good. And then Wolf's Dragoons, as I mentioned, you can kind of put the boot on your opponent and keep them from climbing as fast, and it's one of the only ways in the game the Sentry token and the Wolf Dragoon power are the only ways to hamper what your opponent is doing.
Yeah, the lack of attack cards or attack ability kind of made this feel, especially when me and my brother were playing, that we were almost playing solitaire. Like, you could get up and leave the table and it didn't affect the game in any way if it wasn't your turn.
Absolutely. It is not an adversarial game. You're not fighting the other guy. You're fighting whatever cards you drew.
And speaking of which, there is one encounter that we didn't go through the encounters before we played, so we kind of went into the game blind. But when we flipped over Lyran Scoutlands,
yep,
that was awesome.
Yep, I want to say there are 2 in there because I got both of them last time I played this game. That's one of, I want to say there's maybe one other card. In general, most of the time you're going to want to spend 2 dice to win an encounter, but the Lyran Scoutlands is, the number on the card is 13, so you have to spend at least 3 dice to win. There are other cards that you can only spend 1 dice to win, the ones that have the 1 value. But the Lyran Scoutlands, and there's some other, maybe it's a Clan Command Lance, I don't remember. There's one other that's 13. So those require you to have 3 dice left. So if you're down to 1 or 2 dice and you draw that, you're done. You just lost. There's no possible way to roll high enough to win that.
Yeah, I did that when I had 3 dice, and I was like, wait, what? Oh, that's awesome. I'm so screwed, but that's awesome.
Yep. And another note here, I mentioned earlier the Clan Hunter and the Head Hunter, those are contracts. And what those say is that for each encounter you draw 2 and pick 1, and the rest of the card is powerful, but the ability to look at 2 encounters and pick which one you want to do is incredibly strong because it allows you to dodge the ones that you know you cannot do.
Yep.
You know, speaking of the ones that take 13 to do, if you've only got 2 dice left, you draw that, you're done. So if you draw 2, the chance that you drew 2 13s is almost never going to happen. So you pick the one that, maybe you're still not excited about what the other one is, but it's better than one that's literally impossible for you to finish.
Yep, Clan Command Star 13. Beautiful looking Timberwolf there. Cannot use ballistics or blue dice.
Oof. Oof.
Your auto cannons are of no use.
That is notable because of the three, Merc units that I recommended as being the most powerful, the two blue dice ones are in there.
And that might be a thing. I was using lasers. I was Grey Death Legion, and I got some laser technology early, and I'm a big fan of lasers anyway, so I was using that, and my brother went autocannons. And he lucked out early and got himself, I think it was an ultra autocannon or something, was his one piece of equipment for a while, and he was banging through encounters with it.
It's a really strong piece of equipment. Many times, like, you have to buy what's in the black market. You can't just hold out to, like, let's say you started with a green die. You can't just hold out for missile equipment to show up. You have to take what's there, or you're going to miss the bus and you're never going to make any points. So many times you end up with, started with a green die, but then I had to buy some laser equipment. So I had green and yellow and the basic white dice all at the same time. And that's just how it is. If you're able to put together a coherent thing and get only, like, you get 3 blue dice, that's great because all your equipment applies to that. But most of the time you're not going to be able to do that. You just have to take what's out there.
Yeah, and it can work out in your favor because some of these contracts, especially I think planetary invasions, it'll say that you can't use equipment, or there's some type of penalty for using the different types of equipment.
Yep, you can definitely dodge part of the downside if the card says that you can't. If you're diversified and you have 2 different special colors and the card says you can't use one of them, well, if all you had was that special color, now you're really up a creek. But if you have 2 different colors and it only turns off one, you're not so bad.
Well, I was also going to give my thoughts on the new Mercenaries support cards, the changes that they made in the new Mercenaries box set. They gave optional changes on how vehicles work and simplified things like airstrikes and artillery strikes, minefields and such. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to play with things like airstrikes and artillery strikes and such because they're technically advanced rules, and I can tell you, in all of the years that I've played BattleTech, I have never mastered the Aerotech rules, and my times playing with artillery, long toms and Aero 4s and stuff, have been extremely limited. And it is nice to have in this little Mercenaries rule book, which is, 32 pages, a quick little breakdown where you can throw these in there to introduce people to having more than just, mechs and infantry, or really just mechs for most people, but, also throw some easy vehicles in there, some fortification structures and different things like that.
I have retrieved my copy. I'm paging through it here.
Yeah, I have played one game where I use the vehicle rules, and I've yet to throw down the more one-shot like artillery support and airstrike cards and stuff. I'm looking at this. The vehicles rules speed up the game because vehicles can slow it down a lot. Because I don't know about you, but often when I'm playing vehicles, I get a lot of motive hits against me, so there's all those added rolls when you're taking damage and then seeing if your motive is destroyed or damaged in some way. This kind of eliminates that. It basically takes the entire record sheet of a vehicle, a combat vehicle, tank or whatever, down to, essentially a playing card. You basically attack with it, and then when you're taking damage, you don't have hit points per se. You just sort of take so much damage and then you roll, and if you roll over your damage threshold, and that can be slowly reduced, then you're just destroyed. The nice thing about that is that it speeds up, like I said, the vehicles involved in the game. The downside of that is that you can, roll up on the field and just get nuked in one turn, from like an LRM-10 hit or something. Well, there goes my really good tank. I mean, the chances of that aren't great for, pretty armored vehicles, your heavier vehicles, but it can happen. It can happen to, vehicles easier than it can tanks anyway, but it seems like could happen easier with the threshold rules.
Yep.
I really need to play this more and get into like some tank battles and stuff and see how much it really speeds up the game and how much less durable it really makes vehicles.
Looking at it here, looking at an example of a card, I think this is the Maxim Transport that's on here. I think it's not materially going to change play for hovercraft. They're prone to just taking a hit and flying to pieces anyway, or taking a hit and being immediately immobilized because they have such egregious penalties on taking a motive hit, especially if they get hit from the side. How high the opponent has to roll in order to successfully score a good motive hit is really low against a hovercraft. And so that is what the low destroy value on these cards makes me think for hovercraft. So not taking much fire to take a hovercraft out of the battlefield seems like that matches my experience putting hovercraft on the battlefield in Classic. I am not sure that I like that idea very much for tanks. One of the tanks I love to play in the 3025 era because I like its mobility profile, matches most of the mechs that you would use in that era, and the firepower is great both at long range and at medium to short range, would be the Manticore tank.
Oh, yeah, my favorite tank in the whole game.
The firepower is great, the armor is great, the mobility matches other units that you would put it with. It is everything that I want in an armored vehicle, and the armor is very thick, really good. It can take a lot of hits.
Yeah, it's my Thunderbolt or Warhammer of when I'm building a force. Like, if I don't know what I'm walking into and I have a combat vehicle, I'm going to take a Manticore because it's like it can do almost anything pretty well.
Absolutely. That's exactly where I live with it. You've got the PPC and the LRM-10 give you good long-range firepower, and then something gets closer to you, you've got a medium laser and an SRM-6. You can just fill them full of holes at any range. It's great.
Yep. And then another nice thing about the battlefield support cards, you can kind of mix and match because there's rules in here to convert them to battle value. So I think when I play, the way I think I'm going to handle it is for my own personal usage. I need to, like I said, play more with the vehicles and kind of get a better decision on it. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it so that I'm still going to play with classic BattleTech rules for helicopters, tanks, infantry, stuff like that. And then for the strike cards where you get a strafing run or a long tom artillery support or a minefield, or they have rules in here for like fortifications and stuff like turrets. I think I'll use those rules because that will bring more into the game without me having to sit there and try for the sixth or seventh time to wrap my head around aerotech rules. I really need somebody who's an aerotech master to come over here one day and sit down and really go through these rules with me if I'm ever going to do that.
I'm with you on using the cards for especially like airstrikes. I don't know how those rules work. I don't have any minis to go with it. I don't know any of that stuff. But I am interested in putting a combined arms experience into my classic BattleTech games. So the idea of air superiority, airstrikes, that kind of thing being present on the battlefield, I like that. I'm just uninterested in the depth of the rules necessary to do that. Rules as written, and the cards are a great way to do that in a very simple way.
Oh, yeah. So basically, I'll give my opinion. I'm going to suggest for most people to always pick up either a starter set or Game of Armored Combat first. Then it's kind of up in the air. because I can see how some people would like to go directly to clan invasion. This also kind of, brings in future mechs and stuff too. But I would suggest your order is really, if you're new to BattleTech or you're trying to bring a kid in or something like that, start with the starter box, the starter set, where you get 2 plastic mechs, you get the basic rules. It's what, $25, $20, something like that. You get a lot of game because it also comes with a bunch of cardboard tokens, and you can play BattleTech with just the starter set quite a lot. I mean, in theory, you could play it forever, but you could get a big experience out of it with just that. And then you can decide, all right, am I going to go drop another, $60 or whatever Game of Armored Combat is running at now? Get into that, which will expand your minis collection, give you some more rules, some more maps. And then my personal suggestion is skip the clan invasion for now, go directly to Mercenaries. That way you can get the combined arms experience. And then you can always, if you're interested in the fluff and the new technology of the clans, you can bring those in later. Other people that'll want to concentrate more on mechs alone, then sure, grab clan invasion before you grab Mercenaries. But I suggest Mercenaries first.
That is a solid recommendation. I did check while you were talking about it. The beginner box MSRP is $25. You can get it a little bit cheaper at various BattleTech outlets, but it looks like that's the suggested price.
Yep, I think the first run of them was $20, and then when they did the second edition or second release, whatever, where they changed it, they upped the price by $5, which even at 20, even the starter set, and don't listen to me, Catalyst, but even at $30, if you are looking at it like a board game, I mean, shoot, you can go out and, I mean, how much does a nice Monopoly set cost you? Like, you're going to play with that starter set. If you really like the game, you're going to get a lot of use out of that starter set.
Yep, and the minis that come in that are usable in any other version of the game that you want to play. So that's good stuff there.
And that's one of the things that drew me to BattleTech, honestly. I know some people that play Warhammer 40K, and I have my thoughts on Warhammer 40K. Love the lore, but the sheer amount of money that these guys spend on Warhammer 40K is astonishing to me. And for me, it was awesome because these plastic mechs that I got used out of the 3rd edition box set. I mean, it took me years to have a complete 3rd edition box set, but the few mechs that I had, when I was a teenager in the early 90s, mid 90s, they're still usable today. I mean, there's been a few little revisions in mech sheets here and there where they changed like some fractional accounting, where it made a few minor changes to a couple of mechs on mech sheets. But 99% of the time, you can pull old FASA mech sheets and you can still use those. BattleTech has been great for, you invest the money, and 99% of the time you can walk into a game and you might not understand some of the new stuff, but your mechs are still perfectly playable.
That is true. It has been my experience that most people are still playing in 3025 or Clan Invasion just because so many BattleTech players, that's where we got our start, so that's what we're comfortable with. And yeah, there's all this shiny, there's Jihad stuff, and there's Dark Age stuff, and now there's Ill Clan stuff, but a lot of people don't understand it, don't have a reference point for the technology, and as a result, we just default to playing what we know and what we love, and that's the old stuff.
Yep. I played in a Jihad against the Word of Blake, and they had their Celestial Omni-Mechs and stuff, and they were like, hey, what are you playing? And I was like, 3025, baby. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yep, I have a lot of mechs because I have a lot of battle value.
However, I don't know what case is, so I'm gonna go boom.
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot every ammo weapon every game because I'm sitting on my death. Well, thank you, Lore, for joining me. Thank you for supporting me and being a long-time viewer, watcher, subscriber, whatever of the channel. I said it in episode 50, and I'll say it again. When I first started doing this, I never thought I would make it to Battle Report 10, let alone 50. This is amazing to me. This is fun for me. Obviously, I don't pay my bills this way, so work has to come first, but whenever I get some spare time and I'm not sore from my job, I'm in here writing or video editing or planning or daydreaming about the next video, and I have so many plans. There's going to be big announcements coming up, I hope, soon. And I'm really thankful for you guys for watching this. As a kid, I used to write stories and stuff, and people would roll their eyes. It just amazes me that people comment on my videos and are like, hey, I really enjoyed this. I'm like, really? You liked something I did? This is amazing.
It's a heck of a drug. Well, thanks for having me on, and hello to all the mech warriors out there. I hope you're having a good time.
Do you have a channel of your own? Do you have anything you want to shout out? Do you do anything around the internets?
Not really. There was a time in the distant past when the Harebrained Schemes first came out. I streamed a bit of that, but that didn't really turn into anything. I did it because I loved it, not because I wanted to build a channel or anything. So when enthusiasm for that sort of died out, then I stopped doing that. So nope, I don't have anything to shout out. I am just here because I enjoy the channel, and you'd mentioned that you were doing something that I had experience with, so thought I would hop in and give some thoughts on Encounters.
Well, thanks for being here. Guys, leave your comments below. Did you enjoy Encounters? Do you have any house rules for it? What do you think of my order of BattleTech, starting with the starter set, moving to Game of Armored Combat, and Mercenaries before Clan Invasion? Let me know below, and as always, I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.
Hello, this is Adam with Dream Made Productions. Thank you for watching my content. It really means a lot that you have given me the chance to entertain you. If you would like to support the channel, please visit my Patreon at patreon.com/DreamMadeProductions, linked below. Also below is a link for PayPal, or links if you would like to send crypto, if that's more your thing. Please know any amount that you give will be cherished and used to upgrade equipment and improve the channel. You can also help the channel by subscribing, turning on notifications, liking, commenting, and sharing my channel with anyone you think might be interested. Thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the battle reps that are to come.